When there's a lot of uncertainty around us, it impacts a lot of our own psyche and includes impacting in some ways or another our behaviors, our sleep patterns, maybe the way that we eat, whether we do or don't exercise, all kinds of things that can have an impact not just on our personal being, but on our circle of influence. We're going to take today again to do some practice that will help to manage our own kind of inner conflict, come to some resolution, and hopefully have a better impact on our circle of influence. We'll combine that with what I've come to call the journey to the center of the mind, practices or a practice which allows us to get a real good internal focus. Hi, I'm Steve from Steve White Yoga, bringing you the application of yoga to manage your health, improve your relationships, and balance your life. Come on with me today as we once again explore the journey to the center of the mind. If you were here on Tuesday, this won't be unfamiliar to you. We're going to take a little bit different approach today, a little bit different at least, and hopefully offer some different perspective or information. But we talked on Tuesday, and we will again today, about this process that in yoga is often translated as misidentification. And it's the idea that we aren't defined by the right things. We're defined by mostly all the wrong things. And then a practice that is one of my favorites in this realm of meditation, which is called Journey to the Center of the Mind. And so what this is really about is self-concept and the idea that in some way or another, all of us have succumbed to some or many forces outside of us to establish who we are. So it might be influential people or events in our lives, but how we see ourselves is often shaped by what we could term the outer world. And the suggestion in yoga is that we would do well to be influenced by the inner world as well. So fortunately, we're provided this capacity to step back and examine how we think, how we feel, how we act, and make practical determinations about the value of different aspects of ourselves, different dimensions of our self-definition. So this is, one of the primary purposes really of yoga is to make this examination in a very loving and thoughtful and non-judgmental way. This is where mindfulness excels at creating the environment to foster the skills to do just this, to openly and non-judgmentally observe how we interact, first of all, with ourselves, and also with other people. They're very much interrelated, of course, how we think of ourselves, how we deal with ourselves, and how we deal with the outside world. So that's the idea. If you were here Tuesday, you saw this on Tuesday, and I'll just review it real quickly. So the word is avidya in Sanskrit, and it's the process of identifying with our external circumstances, people or events, excuse me, and with what we are perceived to be or not to be. Both of those come into play. And then in the process, we're ignoring what yoga would say is the unchanging internal and connected life that is within us. It might be referred to as the heart space. In fact, we have a quote that suggests just that we'll have in a little bit. So there is what goes on outside and there's what goes on inside. And what yoga says is that, hey, you need to sort of uncover what's inside because there's some really good stuff in there, and it's going to help you to better deal with what goes on the outside. And that's really what all of this is about. So I called it this on Tuesday. We kind of have like a photo album, and it's these series of pictures we have of ourselves that have been created through time, some consciously, very purposefully, many more unconsciously, just sort of pictures that have been assigned to us by our unconscious through the influence of others or the influence of events. And so while we see ourselves as being like fixed, like this is me, I'm Steve, this is my personality, these are my abilities, these are my shortcomings, this is what I regret in life, this is what I love in life. Instead of having that orientation, we take a different perspective and take the orientation to what we would say is our internal world. And so by defining me, we create this separateness. Like I'm an individual and I'm separate from any other individual or from the planet that I live on or the house that I live in or the ground that I walk on. And, you know, yoga, like all of the old traditions, really, the really ancient traditions suggest that we're just, you know, one element of this environment, and you can start or stop that environment wherever you want, at the four walls of your house or your neighborhood, your community. Certainly nature has a big role to play in that, and it goes all the way out into the cosmos. Yoga has a lot to say about that, but that's a different discussion. So I can't believe this is assigned to an unknown person, but I couldn't find anyone that said it specifically. I've heard it a couple of different on a couple of different occasions. The path of our lives is not to reject any part of our life. So we're not trying to disregard things. We're not trying to throw stuff in the garbage and never look at it or see it again. The process, as you guys know, because everybody who's going to be watching this has had the experience before through these classes and perhaps other places, we're trying to recognize what is, and reality includes how we feel, how we think, how we behave. And so that's part of the process, is that recognition. So it's just a reminder here that we're not trying to sort of segregate things out and like I'm trying to do in my house right now, take things to Goodwill that I don't want anymore or throw them in the trash. We allow everything to exist in our own space. And it's just a matter of our relationship with our own world, with our own environment that we're trying to address, trying to examine. And then we use this one on Tuesday, but it's a good one. Trust the power of heart and awareness to awaken in all circumstances. So this is where the process leads. It doesn't come right away for most people. It's a matter of continued practice. But the idea is that we don't have to be bound by our circumstances or by any pre-existing labels, whether they were self-created or placed on us by the outside world. Yoga teaches us that what we are exists, has always existed, and is always available for us to access. And in this sense, what we are is what's in our heart. And, you know, again, we're obviously not talking about the blood pumper. We're talking about the space of the heart, that space that is the most sacred part of us by virtually every major religious tradition, and certainly by all of the ancient traditions, inclusive of those. So let's practice, shall we? So get yourself settled in. And you know the drill here. We allow our eyes to either soften or close. And then feel our attachment to earth or whatever we're attached to, whether it's a seat or a floor or whatever it might be. So appreciate that which supports you physically right now. And as you relax into your space, just do a quick check of your physical being as it is right now. So you might notice that you find some tension somewhere. And we usually start, you know, we could do the top to bottom approach. So start at the forehead, the temples, the eyes. And if you find any tension, sense the process of softness beginning to play its role. And same thing with the jaw, even the tongue. We might look at the shoulders and neck, at the throat, and from the shoulders to the fingertips. Just a quick mental examination of the arms to see if you're holding any tension. Same thing with the chest. And same thing with the belly, the abdomen, all the way down to the base of the hips. Quick check in perhaps with the legs, the feet, the toes. So this is one of the primary tenets of yoga, is to be stable but relaxed. And one of the expressions used by one of the great teachers of yoga is alertness without tension, uh, relaxation without dullness. So as is our habit here, we're going to take an examination of what's going on in our lives. And the life starts with the inner life, so it isn't necessarily events that are occurring. It's what's going on inside and what's going on outside and how they relate. So it's this process and relationship that we're really concerning ourselves with. And not in a critical or judgmental way, but rather with kindness, with openness, with understanding that we're all just in this human experience doing the best we can, and with recognition for our efforts, whatever they might be. So, as our anchor today, we'll do what we did on Tuesday, which is a little bit of an expansion and may not resonate fully with everyone. So, if you can't sort of get the full concept of it, you'll still get benefit out of it in whatever fashion it occurs to you. So, the idea here is that there is an imaginary or perhaps real, depending on how firmly entrenched you are in this, a space that exists in a physical realm in the center of your head. Now, it's not like you actually have a hole there, hopefully, but it's rather that we have this energetic space. So, would you begin to follow your in and out breaths with your mind? And as you do, can you imagine that the energy of the in breath is being entertained into your nose and then goes straight up into the space at the center of your head? So, in one way, you could think about it being directed there. Or another way to look at it is to think of it being received there. Either way works. So, this sensation that each in breath is being accepted into this space, this energetic space at the center of your head, the center of your mind. And let's set that aside for just a second or two and come to sound, one of the anchors with which we're well familiar. And can you take sound and just take it perhaps a step further than we usually have and introduce it into this same space in the center of your head, the center of your mind? So it's as if sound is being received in that space. And finally, can you notice soft light that's filtering through your eyelids? And can you accept that this light is being received also in this space? And a reminder, it always, this is not the opportunity to analyze it, judge it, make sense of it. It's simply a matter of observing. So this then represents our anchor for today's practice. We'll come back to it again in a little bit. But in the meantime, let's do a little exercise. So we talked about this also on Tuesday. Um, the impact of COVID has been felt, I would assume, by everyone on the planet in some fashion or another. And some people, are certainly, firstly, more directly impacted, secondly, more affected, uh, while other people may be more removed, either from a standpoint of experience or from the standpoint simply of kind of the psycho-emotional effect of it. And it doesn't matter where you fall on the scale, that's completely not important. But I'd like you to think for a moment about something, and it doesn't really matter what it is. There could be several on your plate that would easily qualify. Something that, as a result of the circumstances surrounding our uh, universal dealing with this virus, what's changed for you? So it could be something in your lifestyle, something in your schedule, something in your attitude, in your psyche. But identify with something, if you will, that is connected to uncertainty. And as always, we're not talking about trauma here, so this shouldn't be something that strikes uh, deathly fear into your heart. But some situation, condition, imagination, even as a result of the worldwide existence of this phenomenon that has changed how you are in the world. So, what brings you trepidation? What is something that brings you trepidation about this? It may be just general uncertainty. When is this going to be over? Or it may be something very specific, like uh, how is it going to impact my children? And as you settle in with this, would you take it, how do I want to say this, absorb this in such a way that perhaps you feel some physical manifestation of it? So make it as real as you can in your mind and notice if or where that manifests in the body. And the same checklist we used at the beginning of class might be applicable here. So sometimes it can be somewhere in the face or the jaw, the mouth. It can be certainly in the throat or in the heart, the belly. Tension can appear in hands or arms, in feet or legs. And a lot of our deep emotional tension tends to accumulate in the pelvis. So just spend a moment and see if you might come up with a location or locations where your feelings of uncertainty, of doubt, whatever it might be, surface on a physical level. So if you find some experience, some embodiment of this situation that you've identified, the first step then is to recognize that it's there and then to allow it. And I really love this image of the park bench. So it's like, you're in a park, it's a pleasant day, you've uh, assigned yourself to a park bench. And if you can carry this in your imagination, it's like this experience as it's physically manifested is your neighbor, is next to you on the bench. It doesn't have to take physical form specifically, but just the idea that you're resting with this. And this sort of introduces the possibility that you can be in a pleasant environment and have a pleasant experience and still have some awareness of this situation. One of the teachers I listen to a lot, Tara Brock, will say to bow to whatever your experience is, like a bow of recognition. A few sessions ago, we used the yes meditation. So, an acknowledgement simply by saying yes. Now, if you can still identify some energy in your body that presents as tightness or constriction, take some breaths into that energy, or into that space rather. A couple of deep breaths in and out of that space. And even if you can, the accompaniment with the breath of allowing light to be drawn in with the breath to occupy this space. One of the practices in the tradition is to use the exhale to allow or to release this energy as if it were smoke back out into the ether. So a couple more breaths. If you're sensing embodiment of this issue, just practicing this idea of drawing light in and releasing back out as smoke or mist. You might take this opportunity to ask yourself a question. If I have a choice, would I let or allow outside circumstances to define me, to define who I am? Or am I willing to take on a practice to make contact first with those restrictions, those coverings, those experiences and assignments that have been made by the outside world, and to work toward allowing the experience of the inner self, the self which is there no matter what goes on, no matter how we are accepted, the inner self that allows us to be at peace. And then, if you would turn back to the center of the mind, first introducing breath into that space. And then, if you want to give it a try, making it a trio. So, while sort of holding in the background the breath as it's introduced into this space, also introduce sound so that what you hear and what you feel are both being received in this space. And you might also try introducing light into that equation. So the senses of sight, of sound, of sensation, all being received in this inner space of the mind. And then you can go ahead and relax that effort. All right, good work. I will offer a couple of things here. This can be a good practice to do a few times in a row. So my suggestion is going to be maybe over the course of the next few days, maybe until next Tuesday when we meet again. You might spend, it's just a 10-minute practice. It doesn't take very long, and it doesn't have to be incredibly intense. But you get the concept of it. It's to bring something into mind that isn't particularly pleasing or pleasant. It can be about this situation, about the virus or anything else. It doesn't really matter. But use the same situation continuously over a couple of days and just see what, if anything, changes. And I'm not saying anything will change. It may or it may not. But it is only continued practice that really makes this stuff powerful. If you got value out of today's video, I hope that you hit the like button below. And for more great videos on mindfulness and other issues with yoga off the mat, please subscribe. You can also visit my website, stevewhiteyoga.com, for additional information. Until next time, keep on breathing.